Welcome, I'm Haley Perot, and this is Northwest Newsweek. More than $4 million are missing from the coffers of the Thunder Bay District Social Services Administration Board this year, funding that supports hundreds of affordable housing in the district. It's the direct result of a dispute between the federal and provincial governments. That saw Ottawa hold back a $357 million transfer to the province. Lee Noonan has the details.
More than 700 affordable housing units in the Thunder Bay District are at risk after the Social Services Administration Board lost $4.2 million from this year's budget. DSAB CAO Bill Bradicka says the loss is devastating.
It was a shock, especially given that we were told at the 12th hour. I mean, we were told at the end of March, and the fiscal year for this funding starts April 1st. So there was absolutely no opportunity to plan for this.
The funding comes from Canada's National Housing Strategy via the province. But on March 27th, Federal Housing Minister Sean Fraser announced he would withhold $357 million from Ontario if the province couldn't meet its affordable housing targets. Braddock is urging local Liberal MPs to lean on Fraser to reverse the decision.
The decision to cut this funding will have devastating impacts on the people who are in need of affordable housing.
Roughly $2.2 million of the funding was budgeted for capital repairs for 442 housing units throughout the district. About another $1.2 million was budgeted for operational funding to maintain more than 270 legacy units first built under the Urban Native Housing Program. And an additional $800,000 was budgeted for new builds. Bradicka says as many as 115 existing units could be lost this year if another funding source can't be found.
If this isn't resolved, it's going to impact people, people who currently are in a rent-geared income unit, because there will be less rent-geared income units available, and we already have a wait list of 1,300, and that it's going to make that worse and possibly lead to more homelessness.
In 1 week, the board will have to decide how to handle the issue. Bradicka is recommending dipping into reserve funds to cover 2024, but says that just will not be sustainable in the long term. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Kenora OPP are investigating a fatal single-vehicle collision that happened late Wednesday night. Emergency crews responded to the site of a crashed pickup truck shortly before midnight on Highway 17 just east of Kenora. The 24-year-old driver from Rat Portage was pronounced dead on scene. The investigation continues. Thunder Bay Superior North MPP Lise Vaugeois is accusing the Ford government of giving up on the Terrace Bay Mill. She spoke in the legislature on Tuesday and referenced this comment made by the Premier during his visit to Thunder Bay last week.
It's a very tough situation, tough market. We'll do everything we can to support the workers, but that whole sector right now is challenged, not just here in Ontario, across the country, across North America. So we're there to retrain the workers, find them new opportunities, new jobs.
Vaugeois stood at Queen's Park to say that's a terrible message to deliver to those affected by the mill closure. India-based Aditya Birla Group announced the indefinite shutdown in early January, laying off nearly 400 people. But Natural Resources and Forestry Minister Graydon Smith contends it's the NDP that has it wrong. Here's that exchange.
Forestry experts are telling you sustainably produced forest products are climate-friendly, in demand, and can provide a much greater contribution to Ontario's economy than they do now. The closure not only affects all the families and businesses in Terrace Bay and Scriber, it affects workers and families throughout the entire region, about 10,000 people. Is this government giving up on the pulp and paper industry?
It's typical, Mr. Speaker, that they just don't get the brief right. They don't hear and see what is going on, what this government is doing for Northern Ontario. Of course we want that mill open in Terrace Bay, Mr. Speaker, and we've talked numerous times with leaders in the area about how we're working on doing that. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, what we're doing is saying we look after workers in this party, and everybody in the North knows that.
Vaugeois countered by saying the government hasn't reached out to anyone in the region about the issue. It'll cost $59 million to ensure infrastructure with First Nations are on par with the rest of the province. That's according to a recent report from the Chiefs of Ontario. Kiiwetinoong MPP Saul Mamakwa says that timeline isn't soon enough.
Speaker, in Ontario, $26 billion is needed to close the housing gap in First Nations. Speaker, the Snabatsky Nation covers 49 First Nations. They need more than 7,500 homes built now to ensure people are housed and to quit using jurisdiction as an excuse to do nothing. Will this government act, yes or no?
This isn't about jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker. This is about a commitment from the province of Ontario to build the kinds of roads that can create an opportunity to build state-of-the-art infrastructure in those communities. That's what this is always about. And it's very clear that First Nations leaderships understand that in order to have state-of-the-art wastewater infrastructure and other essential infrastructure in their communities, they need road access. We're prepared to move on that. The Premier has said that explicitly to Indigenous leadership in the North. Will the member opposite support those initiatives?
A train derailment in the Thunder Bay district is under investigation. It happened in Huronian, east of Atikokan. According to the CN Rail, 8 cars transporting grain came off the tracks. Track repairs are underway and are expected to be finished by Monday morning. There were no injuries and no dangerous goods were involved in the derailment. With the Liberals in the middle of their pre-budget announcements, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is demanding a tax on excess grocery profits to address the cost of living in the Northwest and across the country.
I can't pay my bills, put gas in the car, and buy my groceries, but the oil and gas companies are making a record profit. The corporate grocery stores are making a record profit. That just doesn't sit well with people. And I'm not talking high profits. I'm not talking extremely good profits. They're literally making record profits.
Singh has Canada's largest grocery chains in his sights. He wants the government to implement a new corporate tax based on their levels of profit and hopefully de-incentivize grocers from gouging the public.
Well, these type of practices have happened in Canada. It's not unlikely that they're again engaging in some sort of abuse of their dominant market share, and Canadians are paying the price. The Conservatives let them off the hook before. The Liberals continue to let them off the hook. We're pushing back, and what this would mean for Northern is lower prices, more competition, more fairness, and your families will be able to afford the food you need.
Singh says the revenue generated by his excess profit tax would be reinvested into affordability measures like a GST rebate or food security funding. However, the NDP can't put through a tax increase themselves, and Singh says he hasn't been able to get the Liberals on board. Singh also weighed in on the question of federal funding for the Kenora Hospital. At a recent appearance in the region, Premier Doug Ford confirmed his government would fund a new hospital in Kenora, but offered no details. MPP Greg Rickford said they were waiting for the federal government to chip in.
So first of all, the announcement I'm really concerned about, because Doug Ford's government, when they announced it, they didn't announce a timeline, they didn't announce any money. It doesn't really sound like a real commitment. But in terms of the federal role in supporting infrastructure builds like hospitals, yes, the federal government should be stepping up to support the building of hospitals. They should be public. They should be owned by the public. Should not be P3s, public-private partnerships, but owned by the community, owned by the people.
It's time now for the break, but we'll have a story afterwards on the campaign in the region that's promoting potentially life-saving tests that can help prevent cervical cancer. Pap testing rates are only at 50% in the Northwest, and local healthcare organizations want to change that. They'll be touring the region all month with a Papapalooza campaign. The tests can be scheduled with nurse practitioners and family doctors across the region. The screenings are potentially life-saving and can prevent cervical cancer by catching the early signs. With sites all across northwestern Ontario, the goal is to screen as many people as possible.
In northwestern Ontario, our Pap screening rate is around 60%, and we should be a lot higher than that in order to prevent cervical cancer. So we know that we can do a lot better, and more women and people with a cervix need to be screened. It's really, really important. We know that women and people with a cervix who don't get screened regularly, and the recommendation is every 3 years, are more likely to present with higher grade changes and more likely to present with cervical cancer than those people who get screened every 3 years.
Papapalooza is running until April 30th. For more information, you can contact Screening and Prevention Services at the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center or your local doctor. New and inexperienced truck drivers are more likely to get into accidents, according to the Insurance Bureau of Canada. The Bureau and other safety advocates argue that there's an urgent need for better driver training. Lee Noonan has more.
The national rate of transport collisions appears to be climbing, with the number of insurance claims for commercial vehicle accidents increasing faster than the increase in the number of vehicles on the road. That comes from a recent report by the Insurance Bureau of Canada, who say drivers under 25 or with less than 3 years' experience tend to have more frequent and more serious collisions.
You see it in Northern Ontario, and we see it across the country, how many collisions are involving commercial vehicles. And we're supposed to be the professionals on the highway, right? We're supposed to be the ones that can avoid these collisions, anticipate that it could happen.
Travis McDougall, co-founder of Truckers for Safer Highways, says the report confirms what they've been saying. According to the report, accidents tend to be more serious in rural areas and during the winter. McDougall says with many new drivers training on southern Ontario roads, driving in the north can be unforgiving.
You see a lot of multi-lane highways, which presents its own challenges, but you don't see the different terrains that we see in Northern Ontario, where you're suddenly climbing so you're slowing down and then speeding up again. And then you don't see the sudden weather changes.
McDougall says the fact that highways are often the main road through small communities also adds to the challenges for new drivers, as does the lack of areas for stopping.
You leave Hearst, the weather's great. And before you get to Long Lac, you could be an hour into the drive. And before you get it to Long Lac, you're now in a blinding snowstorm. You can't see anything. You want to park. You don't feel comfortable because you're a fairly new driver, but there's nowhere to stop.
The Insurance Bureau is calling for better training with more oversight, graduated licensing for transport drivers, and increased enforcement. McDougall hopes the report will be enough to spur government action.
The common response from government right now is that Ontario has some of the safest highways in North America. And we certainly don't feel that way traveling on these highways. At this point, it's become almost an insult to hear it.
Lee Noonan, TBT News.
MPP Saul Mamakwa called out the Ford government at Queen's Park due to a lack of police presence and resources in First Nations. The NDP member argued policing on reserves is underfunded and should be seen as an essential service.
First Nations policing is funded as a program, not as an essential service. Extra resources are needed to ensure women experiencing intimate partner violence on reserve get referrals to victim services they need. If First Nations policing were essential services, they wouldn't need to apply to get this kind of funding. Speaker, will this government stop underfunding First Nations police support services?
We take public safety all across Ontario very, very seriously. And as the federal government is considering making it the essential services the member opposite said, this is something that we will absolutely support. But in the meantime, as the member knows, as the Community Safety and Policing Act came into force just last week, First Nation police communities have the right to opt in, and we hope they do, so that we will continue to fund adequate policing services and to provide those monies for the communities that they need.
The federal government's earmarking $500 million for youth mental health funding. That was announced by Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland ahead of next week's 2024 budget release. It means support for organizations like the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, and College and Institutes Canada to deliver mental health services. There's no confirmation on how much of the funding will go towards the local community, but Thunder Bay Superior North MP Patty Haidu believes it'll have a significant impact on our region.
I would imagine that our chapters will be successful. We know that in our region there's a high degree of mental health concern amongst youth in Thunder Bay and the Northern Ontario region, and we are very fortunate that so many of these different organizations have chapters right in Thunder Bay. So as the budget details come out, I'll be working with the community to make sure they know how to apply, how to make sure that they are actually getting access to those resources, and we'll be looking to ensure that we get every dollar that we can into our region.
As a former nonprofit organization executive director, Haidu said resources are always a huge concern. She believes this announcement is essential for helping them continue to provide the support the community needs. Fostering good mental health for First Nations youth is the mandate for the Tournament of Hope, which took place all week in Thunder Bay. Lee Noonan was there.
The opening ceremonies for the second annual Tournament of Hope fell on day 2 of the week-long event. After a prayer and opening drum song, event founder Titus Semple welcomed more than 600 youth from across Anishinaabe Nation. According to Semple, registration at the event has nearly doubled compared to last year.
You know, having that experience from last year and how great that event was, it's drawn so many people.
The tournament was founded as a way to help address the youth suicide crisis gripping First Nations, particularly isolated communities. Speakers addressing the youth all emphasize the importance of taking care of their mental health.
You took the time to be here because you're looking for opportunities to not only to play sport, but to do something for yourself. And I acknowledge you for that. And I encourage you to do that.
NAN Deputy Grand Chief Bobby Narcisse says it's very important to invest in youth and give them opportunities to engage in positive activities like the Tournament of Hope.
To instill some of that hope in our youth and our future generations as well, to really look at what resources are available. How can they also participate in creating community-based solutions? You know, many of these youth come from different communities. It's an opportunity for them to really bring back some of these ideas to their home communities.
In addition to hockey, broomball, and volleyball, the event also features a variety of other activities aimed at fostering positive mental health and general well-being.
We want to continue it on as a multi-year event where, you know, we provide kids with the opportunity to get their driver's licenses, to be able to, you know, attend this career fair that we have happening now, but also to just come out and be kids and have fun.
Lee Noonan, TBT News.
After a short break, we'll hear more from the youth playing at the Tournament of Hope. Youth from across Anishinaabe Nation made their way to Thunder Bay this week for the second annual Tournament of Hope. The event features a number of sports competitions with the focus on supporting youth mental health. Lee Noonan has more.
The Tournament of Hope is a week-long hockey, broomball, and volleyball tournament that brings together youth from throughout Anishinaabe Nation. NAN's massive territory takes up roughly 2/3 of the province and includes many isolated communities, with youth rarely getting the chance to meet with friends and family who might live hundreds of kilometers away. What does this tournament mean to you? What do you like about coming down here?
Getting together with my friends.
Means a lot. It's get to hang out with friends, make new friends.
I haven't seen some of these guys in months, because I don't go on the res a lot, and they're not in town a lot. But it's just really great. It's just really great to see them all,
I think it really brings us together because we don't get much opportunities like that at home.
In addition to a busy schedule of hockey, broomball, and volleyball games, the week-long event will also include wellness and cultural sessions aimed at fostering good mental health. The tournament is called the Tournament of Hope. What do you guys think that means? How does it make you feel?
Good. Happy.
That just means hope for our future. Hope that someday it can be easier.
And I think it makes the youth really happy to attend this. Yeah, I know I'm happy already and I haven't even played yet.
The youth we spoke to all agreed that staying active through sports was itself important to their mental health.
Whenever I'm mad, I like to play hockey. It makes me happy. Like right now, this is a great game. I'm having a lot of fun. It makes me more healthy too. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it just takes my mind off the, everyday life, Just get to go out and play hockey.
When you feel alone and just being around people and playing, it just helps. Me and my friends, we really enjoy playing sports, especially if it's together, because that's a way to distract ourselves or remind us of all the good things.
There are 14 First Nations represented here at the tournament, with more than 600 youth coming from as far away as Kitchenamik, and Inawug, and as close by as right here in the city. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
As anticipation builds for this year's Wake the Giant Music Festival, Dennis Franklin Cromartie students got the chance to spend some time with one of the performers. They learned the ins and outs of DJing and music producing, and will even help create a song that'll be performed at the event. Jessica Clement has the details.
Dennis Franklin Cromartie High School students will once again play an important role in this year's Wake the Giant Music Festival. 18 students are participating in a workshop led by one of the festival's performers, Dan General, also known as DJ Shub, who's helping them create a song that'll be performed at the event. General, who's also a music producer, was at the school on Tuesday sharing his experience and skills with the Indigenous youth. The group will spend the next 2 days collaborating and working on the song. General says he's excited to work with the students.
I think any time when you get to work with youth, I think is very important, and especially when it's something like this scale, when it comes to writing music and being creative. I think those creative outlets, you don't see too many opportunities, and I think this opportunity is huge, especially when it ties into something like Wake the Giant and being able to get on stage in front of that many people. That you don't hear that too often.
Grade 12 student Tessa Harper says she's grateful to be a part of the workshop.
It's not a lot that people get kind of opportunities like this to be so close to people who do all of this cool stuff, so I was really looking forward to it. We've only been here for somewhere about an hour, and I didn't know there was so much to DJ and stuff like that. I've already learned quite a bit, even just being here so far. I'm excited to keep learning and working with everybody else.
Greg Chomut is a teacher at DFC and organizer of Wake the Giant. He says one of the main reasons for the festival is to connect their students with opportunities that are often seen as unimaginable.
So one of the classes I teach is music. It corresponds really well with the idea of a music festival, and we try every year to get one of the artists or multiple artists that we book for the festival in here at the school, working with students.
Wake the Giant's lineup is anticipated to be announced in early May, with the festival itself taking place in September. Jessica Clement, TBT News.
Thank you for joining us for this edition of Northwest News Week. We'll be back next week with more of the top stories from across the region.